America's attack on Iran. What will be the aftermath? A warm welcome to everyone. This is the second video in less than an hour that I am doing on the subject. The previous video was merely preliminary or prefatory or introductory. This video is more focused on what could be the likely outcome of this action, which was at once as surprising as it was keenly anticipated. Even though being familiar with the happenings in this region, and particularly the posturing of the Iranian regime over the last 40 years, one could quite clearly see that America will not, especially under Trump's leadership, miss out on an opportunity like this presented on a platter by the Israeli action, attended by flattering success against Iran in the last 9 days. One still hoped, based on Trump's declared policy of pursuing peace rather than overseas military involvements, that America would refrain so precipitously from getting involved in the Israel-Iran conflict. Now that this has happened, what is the way forward? I am doing this video immediately after listening to Donald Trump's brief address from the White House regarding this very important step. Now, he clearly warns Iran against any further action, particularly action in retaliation to the American action, threatening or hurting American interests in this region. He also promises peace. Now, the thing to note is this. America had the power and the military know-how to do what it did in destroying the 3 important nuclear facilities in Iran. But, and that's the important thing, by acting in this manner, America has handed over to Iran the control of the situation. I'm not saying control of the situation forever. The control of the situation in the immediate aftermath. Now, here I am using a general principle. That is, the moment you act against somebody in the public domain, what you do is, you hand over to the person you attack, in whichever form or way you attack, the choice to do what he or she wishes to do about it. You lose control over the situation, and the aggrieved party, the victim, acquires all control over the situation. Now, whether or not the target of attack or the victim has the wherewithal, the means, to shape the situation to suit or promote his or her interests is a different issue. Now, what America can do or will do or has to do here on will depend entirely on what the Iranian regime does in response to this event. So, the total control, ironically, rests with the victim. And this is an inevitable law of life. And this is something that everybody needs to be aware of. And this is the reason why, in spiritual context, a great deal of emphasis is laid on how we react. Now, by reacting, we can perpetuate the offense and the injury in the first action. By reacting wisely, we can also put an end to the sequence of injury, blood, death and destruction. Now it is entirely up to the Iranian dispensation. Now that's precisely where I have the anxiety. Granted that the Iranian regime has been weakened considerably, granted that Iran has its back to the wall, granted that Israel has total control over the Iranian airspace. Granted that Iran has today is no match for America. All that granted. But there is something to be reckoned, and that is the plight of the Iranian regime. Is the Iranian regime today in a position to stomach this frontal insult? A greater insult than this cannot be slapped on the Iranian regime. I'm sure all of us realize that an action, whatever be that action, will be weighed on two scales or weighed in terms of two considerations. One, the volume of destruction caused by that action. Second, the psychological and symbolic gravity of that action. My submission is that in this instance, the instance of America destroying the three key nuclear facilities of Iran, to which Iran had come to attach a tremendous pride, not merely financial investment, but national pride. How will the Iranian regime and the Iranian people view this attack, and how they view this attack will go a long way in determining how they react. Now, as regards the economic investment, by available information, internationally it is understood that Iran has invested $4 trillion. $4 trillion. That's equal to India's total GDP. $4 trillion in the nuclear and its allied missile program. Why did Iran, which was actually a cash trap, make this huge, humongous investment? Because national pride was involved. Iran or the Iranian dispensation could expect the people of Iran to tighten their belt and walk along with them simply because this was projected as the focal point of their national pride. That's precisely where America and Israel have hit. And therefore, going by simple common sense, I do not expect the Iranian regime to look the other way. Sure enough, Iran is not able to retaliate in a commensurate fashion or extract a tooth for a tooth. At least they will extract a little inconvenience for a tooth. And that is the way I see the situation. Now, the familiar Iranian response strategy is usually described with the help of three words. Just three words. It's easy to remember. Missile, militia, terrorism. Iran's response strategy henceforth will be focused on three possibilities, and they'll all work in conjunction. Missiles, and even though by Israeli assessment, 50% of Iran's missile launching capacity has been already disabled or destroyed by Israel, the other 50% remains, and Iran has a very substantial stockpile of very sophisticated ballistic missiles, as well as a nearly endless supply of drones, very deadly drones. And you would have noticed that from yesterday onwards, there has been a shift in the Iranian military strategy. They have now come to rely, as far as attacking Israel is concerned, rely more on their drones than on their missiles, though missiles are still being used. So, Iran is still with a lot of missiles to use if it chooses to. Militia, yes, through a very calibrated policy or strategy, the Iranian militias in many places, especially Gaza, Lebanon, to a lesser extent Yemen, have been crippled. But the Iranian militia in Iraq is still intact. And the many Iranian militias in the regions I have just now mentioned are not completely eradicated. They are there, though, to a lesser extent. So, if Iran wants to reactivate them and use them for nuisance value, this can go on for the years to come. I don't believe that Iran will now launch itself into an all out frontal military confrontation against America. Rather, it will rely on the three words or three strategies that I mentioned: missile, militia, and terrorism. Uh, Perhaps much more than Americans, the Jews, the Israelis all over the world are sure targets and easy targets, soft targets of terrorist attacks. And I expect this Iran sponsored covert terrorist actions against Israelis spread all over the world will increase tremendously in the days ahead. And I will not be surprised if Americans are also targeted. Whether Iran will attack American embassies is more doubtful, but in my mind, there is no doubt at all that individual American citizens will be targeted. There are so many of them all over this region, and there are 700,000 of them in Israel alone, in such a small country. So the Americans have to be extra careful in the days ahead. But the main thing I want to say in this video is as follows. Time has come for the people of Iran, as well as the people all over the world, to be a little more objective, truthful, and realistic about the dynamics of managing national affairs. Now, unfortunately, for a long time, countries in this region, perhaps much more than countries in other regions, have come to worship power. Power had become the idol of the people in this region. Power is worshipped by human beings all over the world. There's no question about it. There is no human being on planet Earth who does not worship power. It is not God who is worshipped, but power. If at all God is worshipped only as Almighty. And therefore, ultimately, if you reduce all these things, religious paraphernalia, to their essentials, you will find that people worship only power. But I think history confronts us time and again with the reality that power is a double-edged sword. You can wield it against others, but it will also cut your own throat. Now, let's look at Iran. The present Iranian regime, sustained itself over the last 40 years on the anti-America hate campaign. The national slogan of Iran is death to America, death to Israel. Now, whether you mean it or not is a different thing. There is a propaganda item meant to sort of electrify the people in Iran towards undying and unlimited loyalty to the regime. It's a different issue. As far as people in these two countries, America and Israel, are concerned, here is a country that publicly pledges itself to eradicating, wiping out if possible, these two countries. How do you expect the Americans and the Israelis to view the situation? One is not surprised that they come to the conclusion that Iran is an existential threat to them. And in fact, I'm not surprised at all. I'm totally convinced that this consideration is the most decisive factor, or served as the most decisive factor in America's or Trump's decision to bomb Iran. Now, why did the Iranian dispensation or the Iranian regime choose to go on this path? It's because there is a psychology suffused in the population of Iran. What the Iranians love most is this aggressive posturing against America and Israel. So there is this kind of diabolic collusion between the people and the leadership. And that is precisely at the heart of this matter. And that will also bind and constrict the options available to the Iranian regime. Based on this, I venture to make a prediction, realizing fully well that it is foolish and dangerous to make predictions on events like this because This is a situation that's extremely volatile and fluid. Things can change not by the hour but by the minute. Even so, I would say that as far as Iran is concerned, but Iran looks at the situation and weighs the pros and cons and the options available to its dispensation. I'm pretty clear that the option of stomaching this insult and singing the song of peace is just not open, just not available, just not real, just not palatable to the Iranian regime. This, my reading, is further reinforced by another very subtle fact not adequately mentioned by the media. 2 days ago, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, published a list of 3 names from which his successor has to be chosen. Now, it was anticipated, it was widely believed before the Ayatollah did this, that his son would succeed him as the next Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran. Why has he excluded his son from the list? Because clearly he wants his son to survive. So it is very clear that from the Ayatollah's perception or viewpoint, he was not going to survive. That is to say, if the Ayatollah is given the choice is war, not peace. The Iranian regime will not take this lying down. They may not have the ability to counterattack adequately, but they will have the resolve, the desperate resolve to counterattack, unmindful of the consequences, because a time comes in the life of individuals and nations when desperation rather than common sense rules the roost. And I think Iran is now in that state. Therefore, the prospect of Iranians responding to the invitation issued from the White House by the redoubtable Trump, that now war is over, let's have peace, will not be acceptable to Iran. Now, there's another thing I want to say, and on that perhaps I'll close. What strikes me as particularly significant and also poignant, pathetic, is the supreme and complete isolation of Iran. Iran would have expected that in the moment of its utmost crisis, at least a few countries would rally around. After all, there is something called the Ummah, the global Islamic Brotherhood. Attack one Muslim, it's like attacking all Muslims. Now, that's just mere bunkum. It doesn't exist. That bubble has been burst. Secondly, Iran's present plight is an important, very significant case study on what happens to a nation when it when it adopts various postures based on certain calculations, factoring in the anticipated solidarity and support of other nations. Please understand that other nations have their own headaches. For example, Iran supported Russia to an incredible extent in its campaign or special operations in Ukraine. So time has come for Putin to pay back. Putin says, sorry, I can't do anything. Iran would certainly have expected that Turkey, the foremost Islamic power in the world, it has the 5th largest, mightiest army in the world, Turkey. Iran would have expected that Turkey would do something. Interestingly, Turkey was far more outspoken and far more in explicit support of Pakistan against India than of Iran against Israel. It's very interesting. To me, it is supremely interesting. So this is something that India also has to take note of. After all, if you look at the Operation Sindoor, India was more or less where Iran is today. Nobody came to our support. And nobody should. Why should somebody else bother? Each country has to count only its own chicken. Do not count on the legs on the eggs in somebody else's basket. Formulate your strategies based on what you are capable of. Others will mind their business. This is also true about individuals. One of the many mistakes I committed in my life, about which I am not apologetic. Perhaps if I begin my life all over again, I may repeat the very same mistakes in spite of my present knowledge. Even if I have all this knowledge as foreknowledge, I might still do the same. What was that mistake? I took upon myself to do battle for other people's sake. Hundreds of battles have I fought for the sake of others. But when the hour of my crisis came, there's not a single person. Not only that, they began to think of me as a great burden. Though, whatever I am even now doing is because of the request from my fellow Christians, they would just disappear from the scene altogether. You have to work out your life strategies without counting on anyone. And therefore, you have to develop on the personal level, you have to develop your inner strength. At the national level, you have to develop the strength of the nation. Each country has to develop its own potential to the uttermost, and the key for doing that is developing your people. The mistake India is committing is that we are not doing enough to develop our people. We are making huge investments in military might, etc., technology, weapons, etc. All that is nothing compared to what India can be if we develop our people. After all, what is the strength of America? It's the development of the people. What is the strength of Israel? Not just its military arsenal, which it has to an awesome extent, but ultimately it's the people. Develop the people. There's no alternative to it. At the individual level, please grow and develop yourself. Develop your inner strength. Life will put you to the test. At that time, don't look here and there. Nobody will come to your help. You will have only yourself to count on, and God above and yourself below. Nothing else. Nothing else. It's exactly like the moment of your death. Who can come and help you in the hour of your death? That's exactly how life is to be lived. That's what the philosophers of ancient Greece said. Plato, for example, said, all of life must be a preparation for death. And deriving his insight from Plato, but without acknowledging it, Covey, the great management guru, in his effective principles, principles for an effective life, etc. That book, I forget the exact title. He uses this concept. If you want to lead an effective life, one of the things you have to do is to factor your death into your life strategies. Because at that moment, you'll be supremely alone. Even the dearest and the nearest ones can do nothing for you. You'll be left alone with your destiny. And the only thing you can do is to so live your life as to earn for yourself the strength to face the hour of your death without flinching. Or to put it more positively, to meet the hour of reckoning with confidence, courage, joy, celebration, thanksgiving, as Jesus Christ did on the cross of Calvary. The very last words he uttered was, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. He transformed the hour of death into an hour of celebration. That is the measure of strength. There is no atom bomb in the world that can take the place of this strength. That's the only message I want to give to my friends. Yes, this region is going to be in turmoil. In what specific form, I do not know. But I do believe, and I'm pretty sure about it, that this is not the end of it. And perhaps the theater, the drama is still beginning. All the best.